The latest episode of the Clone Wars titled Shattered has aired, and yeah, that's basically how I feel right now. I feel shattered. I watched this episode 2 times in a row because my first watch was me just being anxious the entire episode. I always knew that this was all coming, but not exactly how it would all play out in regards to Maul and Ahsoka. Either way, what a haunting episode. So let's dive in. We open up after the Battle of Mandalore has been won. Mandalore is now back in the hands of Bo-Katan, and Ahsoka succeeded in her duty to capture Maul and hand him over to the Republic. I really liked the moments shared between Bo-Katan and Ahsoka in this episode, specifically where Ahsoka mentions that she's learned from the best regarding her ability to capture Maul, and Bo-Katan is included in that mentor list. What I did find interesting was Bo-Katan's response, wishing that she was good at something other than war. I think there's some really interesting existential questions raised in this episode regarding wars and the soldiers who lead them, but we'll get to that. Mandalore is now under the leadership of Bo-Katan, and none of this really feels victorious in the slightest, since this was a false war manufactured by Maul. And on top of that, the Night of 1,000 Tears is also on the horizon, so it's impossible to feel comfortable as you watch any of this. But that tension is also really what makes this episode great. Now for me, I love the obvious overlapping with Revenge of the Sith. We saw some of this in the trailers for season 7, but it was fascinating to watch in this final arc. What's really tragic about this though is, had Ahsoka been brought to the council meeting earlier, she could have seen Anakin one last time and potentially spoken to him about what Maul had said, but she never had a chance. And the way Filoni weaved Ahsoka into the extended meeting scene from Revenge of the Sith was fantastic. Ahsoka walks in as Yoda finishes his line about how concerned he is to go down this line of thinking that Mace Windu suggested in regards to the Jedi themselves taking control of the Senate temporarily. One thing about Mace, he's such a jerk to Ahsoka. When asked if she did her duty as a Jedi or a citizen, Ahsoka still chooses citizen because she doesn't fully trust the Jedi, and it's completely reasonable in my opinion. And because of this, Mace eventually shuts Ahsoka down when inquiring about the Chancellor and the end of the war. He replies, "I'm sorry, citizen. These matters are for the council to discuss." Ugh, good grief. Maybe Mace deserved to be yeeted out a window. I don't know. Regardless, I was happy to see Yoda hope for Ahsoka to speak with him a bit more when everyone else had left the meeting. But Ahsoka doesn't want to mention anything to Yoda about Anakin and what Maul has told her. And I'm sure Yoda could sense something along those lines, but Ahsoka kept those facts to herself because after all, she was falsely charged and tried by the Jedi Order, which is why she chose to become a citizen in the first place. What would they do to Anakin if she told them what she knows? In my opinion, that's what's stopping her. Even Rex was surprised that Ahsoka didn't mention anything about Anakin to the council. Now, from here, the music changes to this sort of bass-heavy synth droning of anxiety. I also really loved that weird ancient Mandalorian Hannibal Lecter chair that they put Maul in to transport him back to the Republic. For me, it sort of creates some connective tissue between using carbonite chambers to store bounties and this historic Mandalorian transport technique. Also, Maul's eyes peering around here as he's basically being brought to his death was chilling. He looks so alarmed, and rightly so. So Ahsoka and Bo-Katan share their final goodbyes, and Ahsoka rejoins her troops to head back to the capital. It's so dark and brooding sounding here. We enter into a few minutes of just pure tension while Ahsoka gets aboard a Venator, while everything looks like business as usual. When Ahsoka and Rex get to the bridge of their destroyer, they finally talk, discussing war and how both of them were bred to be soldiers even though the Jedi were supposed to be peacekeepers. Rex and his brothers have mixed feelings about the war because without it, they wouldn't even exist. For now, Rex isn't even aware that everything was a ruse by Palpatine, but it's a fascinating topic to bring up in these final few episodes. And it's sad when Ahsoka states that, well, some good has come out of all of this regarding the clones and their existence, when literally in 2 minutes, Order 66 is about to happen. Before Rex gets his final command, Ahsoka tells him she couldn't have asked for better soldiers or a better friend. And now we're crying again. So Rex goes off to hear the latest briefing, aka Order 66, and Ahsoka decides to stay behind, telling Rex she's sure it's just some good news. And what happens next is really awesome. First, the moment that Maul had been waiting for happens. The Fall of Anakin. We watch his eyes dart open as we start to hear the actual audio from Revenge of the Sith, and then Ahsoka also senses this moment too. Ahsoka is shaken by what she feels, which is Anakin's betrayal. And the cut to Rex's eyes as he's staring at Darth Sidious was amazing. When Rex hears Ahsoka call his name and his hands start trembling, I was immediately on the edge of my seat. Ahsoka says something terrible has happened, and Rex drops his helmet like a 1,000-pound weight right onto the ground. It was so crazy to watch the other clones behind Ahsoka turn around and raise their blasters at her, and thankfully, Rex was able to tell Ahsoka, find fives before going full Order 66. It was extremely well done, and of course, Ahsoka does escape the situation as they all shoot at her, but I loved that Battle of the Heroes was playing during the scene. I also thought it was interesting that beyond the order to execute Order 66, if any clone failed to comply with the command, they would be executed for treason as well. It raises the level of stakes for Rex, but we will get there. Now, when we finally cut back to Maul in his Hannibal Lecter tank thing, and he's about to be executed by clones, Ahsoka uses the Force to toss all the clones around like ragdolls, and she frees Maul. First, I actually did figure this was going to be a team up, but it wasn't. And I actually think I'm happy that there wasn't a team up now because of how the rest of the episode plays out. At first, Ahsoka puts a blade to Maul's neck, asking if this was all of his doing, but the full picture of Palpatine's plan has finally come to fruition in Maul's mind, and he explains what's happening. They finally understand that Palpatine Sidious's plan was to use the entire GAR to annihilate the Jedi. Maul also believes that Ahsoka freed him to team up with him too, but she just needs a diversion for her own sake. She even denied him a lightsaber, but to be frank, Maul didn't need a lightsaber at all. Either way, reflecting on Maul escaping and his survival, it's interesting that it was Ahsoka that freed him, regardless of her reasoning. Now, from here, the music goes into this retro 80s Mandalorian-esque theme, and I love it. It's something the Clone Wars hasn't really done before, at least to my knowledge, but it worked well in this portion of the episode because it continues to create that tension as we watch. And eventually, Ahsoka comes across some astromech, and she turns them all on, and they are all already concerned about what's going on with all the clone troopers turning on the Jedi, but they also want to help. So they help Ahsoka learn about fives, and Ahsoka ends up learning about the malfunction with his inhibitor chip. And then she also finds a grievance report by Rex that was sealed, but then she gains access to that by using Anakin's passcode. She watches Rex say that there's a possibility that the chips that were put in them have a purpose that they don't fully understand. So now her goal is to essentially turn off whatever it is that the chip is doing to all the clones' minds, at least for Rex. From here, we transition to what I would call the Rogue One moment. Well, at least the first Rogue One moment. Maul basically does his own Vader in the hallway scene, which is one of the best, most brutal moments out of this show and Star Wars that I've ever seen. Maul decapitates troopers with metal panels and doors, literally smushes them, throws them around like they weigh a pound, and uses the Force to make sure blaster doors cut off the arms of one of the troopers. It was an extremely intense scene. Honestly, I like it more than Vader in the hallway, but the influence is clearly from Rogue One. So the way that Ahsoka captures Rex was pretty fun. She uses a droid to project her own image so that she could get behind him, and then when she called his name and he turned around, the droid would incapacitate him. I thought that was cool. Ahsoka has some solid strategic planning, and she ends up bringing him to a medical bay to scan for the chip and hopefully take it out. And at first, nothing comes up at all. And then we get to what I call Rogue One moment number 2. While the other troopers are trying to get into this medical bay that they're both in, she started chanting what Chirrut Imwe chanted as he made his way across the battlefield in Rogue One. I am one with the Force, and the Force is with me. She says this over and over until Rex starts saying it in his incapacitated state. And I think what happened is this triggers the chip into action because it senses the Force. And now she can let the medpod thing cut it out of his head. For now, she's unsure if taking the chip out is actually going to do anything. But the episode wraps up with Rex taking out a few of the troopers when the doors opened up as Ahsoka is being overwhelmed with blaster fire. Ahsoka asks Rex if he's okay, and he apologizes for almost killing her. But he tells her that every single clone has been affected by this order. Then the episode ends with the two of them still having to escape the Venator. So yeah, what an episode. I'm actually playing it in the background as I write this sentence, and everything about the music, the animation, the tension, the story, it all gives me chills. I hate that I'm always saying this, but yeah, this arc is without a doubt my favorite arc to have come out of the Clone Wars. And now I'm sad that the Clone Wars is ending. This is the kind of Star Wars storytelling that I want, and hopefully this final episode on May the 4th stays on course, leaving the Clone Wars on the highest note it's ever been. Episode rating, 100 out of 10. So what did you all think of Shattered? Tell me down below. And as always, please make sure to like and subscribe to keep the channel growing. May the Force be with you. AT-AT signing off.